Friday, and thanks for tuning into RadioFreeRhinecliff.org and this show in particular. Correct me if I'm Norm. I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Tate Rubinstein and his better half, Ola or Oli Rubinstein or Rubinstein, or Ola Charlotte Robbins. I assume also possibly Oli Charlotte Robinson. Who knows how many other aliases there might be. Do you go by one or all of them depending on the situation?
I always introduce myself as Oli, I'd say personally and with friends, but professionally, my sign off is just Ola. So like all of our exhibitors, everyone we work with in advertising, the school, because it's my real name, knows me as Ola.
Okay.
So it's a real, I should probably tackle the discrepancy at some point.
It's interesting. It's a good lead into the show. And so at work, are you, tell everybody what you all do and actually make a plug for what you're doing in a couple of weekends.
Sure. Oh, so actually next weekend, Memorial Day weekend, beginning Saturday, Sunday, and then through Monday, so the 23rd to the 25th, we have our 45th annual Woodstock-New Paltz Art and Crafts Fair. It's been going on since Tate was a baby, actually. It was founded by his father and his uncle in the 80s. And it is a festival in New Paltz at the Ulster County Fairgrounds underneath the Shawangunks. It's super beautiful. We've got about 220 juried, curated exhibitors alongside ongoing live music, craft demonstrations, prepared food, a beer garden, distilleries, wineries, a children's craft tent, etc. So there's something for everyone, and it's going on weekend long in just a few days.
Amazing. Well, thanks for making the time to be here. You must be very busy leading up to that.
Yeah, this is busy time. Yep.
Yeah, and
in a good way.
And if people want to know more, they can go to quailhollowevents.com.
QuailHollow.com. We are Quail Hollow Events, exactly, but it's Quail Hollow.
Quail Hollow. It's a great name.
So Quail Hollow is actually the road that my dad grew up on in Brooklyn, right in Coney Island in Seagate. It was called Quail Hollow was the name of the road. And so that's the name of the show. When they
That's funny.
When they moved out of Brooklyn to the Hudson Valley in the early 80s, and they founded the business, they call it Quail Hollow Events.
When you say they, was it your dad?
So it was my dad,
brother?
Neil Rubinstein, and his brother, Scott Rubinstein.
Yeah.
My dad tragically passed away about a year and a half ago. Very unexpected,
So
out of
sorry.
nowhere. Yeah, thank you. And Scott is still around. He still lives in Saugerties. But, Scott we sort of bought out Scott's shares of the business in 2016, 17, while we were still living out west in New Mexico, and then kind of slowly made our way back here to Rhinebeck, where we live now.
Wow. Are we going to unpack all of that? It's going to be a whole show.
There's a lot to get into.
Of questions.
Yeah.
You were living in New Mexico, you and Oli.
Good job. Yeah.
What were you doing out there?
Well, we were doing a lot, but we had a house there that we looked really inviting and beautiful to us when we were living in Brooklyn and just getting married. And we were like, it looked like a nice place to be rather than spending $3,000 a month, even back then, for a tiny loft. So essentially this is another story, but my mom and his parents are all from Great Neck, New York. They actually went to high school together, but didn't know each other. They're all staggered. We met at a bar, fresh out of college in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, when I was 22, and discovered all of the connections. But meanwhile, while his parents had transplanted themselves to Woodstock from Great Neck, my mother had transplanted herself to New Mexico, first house, and then outside of Santa Fe, in between Santa Fe and Albuquerque. So actually kind of similar trajectories, just one much further.
Right.
And then my grandparents eventually, when they were aging, moved themselves out to New Mexico to be closer to my mom. And when they passed, we had a big connection already. I had grown up, went to high school out there, and we had a beautiful house my grandparents were just in. So we wanted to give it a try. Got married while we were out there, even though we got married back here, and had both of our kids there, and then moved back about 8 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, our older daughter went to kindergarten in Placitas, which was a very little mountain town we lived in, right under the Sandia Mountains, which was beautiful. It's called Sandia Mountains because Sandia is watermelon in Spanish, and every night at 8 o'clock, the mountains would turn this bright, orange, pinkish color. Very beautiful place to live. Yeah.
And are they big mountains? Are they part of the Rocky Mountain chain? Or?
They're not part of the Rockies, but they're gorgeous. They're a beautiful mountain range. Not quite like the Rockies, but they're really spectacular and stunning.
Yeah, it's a
More
very
so than
beautiful
you
place
see.
to live. I was not familiar with New Mexico. I traveled a lot, but hadn't really spent much time there. And then, living in Brooklyn, it was a good opportunity to live out there for a while and go. And it was great.
Right. And so what did you all do? I understand your mom had a
Oh,
place.
right. So my mother was there. She's an artist, which is what brought her like post-college to New Mexico in the first place. Like many artists have treated New Mexico like a mecca since the 19th century. In fact, most of her best friends and neighbors are all New Yorkers from Brooklyn or Queens there. But so we wanted to be closer to her, but I had just finished the course portion of grad school for art history and was working on my dissertation and was teaching in the city, and then ended up teaching art history survey classes in New Mexico while we were there. And Tate was finishing school as an acupuncturist and then opened up a practice.
Yeah, I got I did a program, like I got a DO, a doctorate in Eastern medicine and like different forms of physical therapy, things like this.
DO doctorate?
Yeah, in
What is that?
Eastern medicine. So I was doing like acupuncture, different forms of physical therapy, all kinds of treatment. I linked up with a guy who owned a practice in a town called Bernalillo, which was like a little, a very small town near where we lived. Fast forward a little bit, I wound up taking over the practice from him and had it for a long time, for like, 8 to 10 years. And then I actually wound up selling it to the woman who worked with me when we decided to move back to New York in like the 2018 range. So I studied that out there. I had a very, it was great. I had a very good practice, very, intertwined with the community there. It was great. I loved living in New Mexico. I thought it was beautiful. I played a lot of tennis up at this club up in the Sandia Heights, which was like cut into the mountains of New Mexico. It was hard because it was at altitude of like 7,000 feet, which I wasn't used to, so I couldn't control the ball quite as well as I can here. But it was great. We loved living there. We were close to Oli's mother. Both kids were born there, so it was great for that stage of life living there.
And how does the ball respond differently at altitude?
So when you play at altitude, not just tennis, but anything, the ball flies. So you have to if you're familiar with tennis, you have to string the rackets a little tighter. They actually use something called high altitude balls, which are almost like a deader feel to the ball because they fly through the air. So, I'd never heard of this before. When I first started playing in New Mexico, they put me on a USTA league team. And the first match I played, I opened a can of balls, normal balls. We played 3 games. And then the guy looked in the trash and saw that the balls were regular altitude and had to start the set over again because they have to be high altitude balls. I was not familiar with this. I'd never even heard of a high altitude ball before.
Right.
So it was interesting.
And you were a good player when you moved to New Mexico.
Yeah. I've always played. Yeah, I played. My dad was a great tennis player. My uncle too.
I remember.
I grew up playing. So
I knew your dad from the Woodstock Tennis Club.
That's right. He was the president there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. So you took it up as a youth with him.
Tennis, you were talking. Yeah, tennis. Yeah, I grew up at Xena Rec, which was in Woodstock. It was like a little pool and tennis club that, my sister and I would get dropped there at like 7:30 in the morning and get picked up at like 7:30 at night. So I spent like pretty much my whole youth there, and they had pools and tennis courts. So a lot of the guys I'm friends with now to this day, we grew up at Xena Rec together, which was fantastic back in the
snack bar.
Snack bar that was run, they had hamburgers and hot dogs. That's right.
It's a great place. It's such a wonderful family and local place, Xena Rec.
It's great. And one of my good friends that I play a lot of tennis with is now like I don't know what the role is, but he's like the head of the tennis department there. So,
nice.
He brings his family there. We're not actually members because we live far away, but I love Xena Rec. It'll always have like a place in my heart. I grew up there.
And you'll have 2 kids, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever take them there to sort of like see what your youth was like?
We have taken them there. Yeah, she took them last summer. We have taken them there a little bit. My mom's house and the house I grew up with is like 5 minutes from there, and there's a pool there now. It wasn't there when I was growing up, but now there is a pool. So, we bring them swimming over there, but we've definitely taken them to Xena Rec.
Nice.
Yeah.
And who's the head of tennis there now?
My friend Matt Guido, who I play a lot with, he's got little kids there, so he runs the tennis part of it.
Oh, that's sweet. I just saw that Sean from HVIT is doing a clinic there this summer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or a camp.
Yeah,
or
he's
whatever.
doing some outdoor stuff there.
Yeah,
that's
outdoor
right.
stuff.
That's correct.
Because his place is indoors.
That's right.
Huh. And Oli, do you play tennis as well?
I like to let Tate have a couple of things that are just his own.
She did try one season.
I know I do. You know what? I've don't play tennis, but I am taking lessons with a friend right now and
sweet.
have been for the past couple of years. And I actually was getting really into it right as I got pregnant with our older daughter. And then I was kind of like, I guess I'll step back for a bit. But I really enjoy it. But, it's a lot takes a lot to be good. And we've been pushing away the pickleball of it all. But it's possible that might be a smoother path forward for people like me and my children.
Yeah.
No, I really love it. I do take weekly lessons now.
And how old are the kids?
14 and 10.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's a good enough age to
Yeah.
take it up again.
4th grade and 8th
Yeah.
grade, yeah.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
Yeah. And how do you feel about pickleball, Tate?
I was very resistant to pickleball for a long time as a tennis player, and everybody I would talk to, who knew I played tennis, they would tell me about pickleball and how great it is. I have now started to understand, what it's all about. Tennis is a very hard sport. I mean, if you didn't grow up playing it, to hit 2 or 3 balls back is very difficult. Pickleball is sort of easy. It's easy. I can bring my children out and they could hit 10, 15 balls, pickleballs back and forth, where with tennis, it's very difficult. So I get the appeal to pickleball. I only get so much tennis during the week, and I'm not ready to give up one of those outings for pickleball yet, but I understand the appeal to it. I think it is fun. But
He
I'm
did
not there
just
yet.
order a pickleball court for the house.
A net. Yeah, we got a
A
net.
net.
Open
Okay,
one
not
net.
a court for
A
the
net.
net. Yeah.
We drew lines. Me and my daughter drew because she's playing it in gym class, and she was complaining about not being as good as she thinks she should be. So I brought her outside and we drew some temporary lines, pickleball lines in the driveway, and just with no net, hit the ball
And
back.
the
and forth.
driveway is pretty flat?
Yeah, it's flat enough.
Flat enough.
Flat enough.
It has a roll. So it's a benefit to be probably on the downhill side. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We have a little basketball hoop set up, so there is a flat part of the yard, the flat part of the blacktop there. So we just put temp lines on, and it was fun. That's what's nice about pickleball. You can kind of do it anywhere. You certainly couldn't put a tennis court
Yeah.
in the driveway. So
Yeah. I ask him because there's sort of manufactured rivalry between tennis and pickleball.
That's right.
And I've played pickleball. People are like, oh, you don't play. I'm like, I have. I don't care.
When I was down in Florida visiting my mom over the holidays, the pickleball scene there was nonstop. So I did wind up playing down there. What's kind of nice with the pickleball is you just show up and play pickup games. With tennis, you go with your people. It's not, it's not like you go just show up and
I think
play.
that's nicer, though. I'm intimidated by pickleball here because of the pickup scene of it all. It feels... There's a lot of women who are very good and very into it here, and I don't feel that I could just go out and play for fun,
Right.
actually.
And have you ever thought about taking pickleball lessons?
No,
Yes.
I think Tate can probably just...
Yeah, I
help
could
me
give you a
with that,
pickleball lesson
maybe.
if you.
Up with the pickleball. But you're taking tennis lessons.
I am.
Who are you taking tennis
With
lessons
Steve
from?
Guernsey, he's awesome.
Uh-huh.
You know, Steve.
I take him with my friend Jade. and
But
he's
a
fun.
good teacher is
Yeah.
hard to find.
I knew
He's
Steve for a
amazing.
while, so they were looking for someone. So I set them up with Steve. He is good. He's very good. And he teaches at the public courts and stuff like that. So.
When you say them, you mean Oli and the kids?
No, not the
No.
kids. She does with friends sometimes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
And the kids, are they interested at all?
The kids are very good gymnasts. They actually compete, and do gymnastics competitions. Very into that. The older one has now started playing softball at school, which is kind of fun. She's doing modified softball. So I've been going out and throwing the ball around with her a lot, which is great because the gymnastics, I can only do so much. I can't, I'm starting to learn it, but I can't help her with tumbling and flipping and stuff. That's not
Right.
me.
You can get some mats for the house or whatever.
We have a full
Oh.
setup in the basement.
We've got
that's
an
excellent.
aerial rig outside, an aerial silk in the basement,
Oh,
a beam,
my
bars.
God.
They've been into it for years.
So you all have $250,000 of equipment.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they're very lowbrow pieces of equipment, but yeah,
That's funny. That must be really something to watch. And do
they're
they,
good.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
They're good at it. Yeah, they're good.
Because it's a tough road.
It is. It's very interesting. Watching these gymnastics meets that we've been doing over the years now, it's interesting. It's a lot of, it's a long meet, and the actual time that they compete is probably 2 minutes total out of a 3-hour meet. So it's a lot of waiting and a lot of downtime. So mentally, I think it must be very difficult for them because it's so much anticipation for these small events that they do, and then they come and go very quickly. So
And where do they study? Where do they practice at?
They are on teams at a gym in Pleasant Valley called Gold Star. So it's 20 minutes from us. And it's both wonderful and challenging that they're both passionate about the same sport. But
Oh, yeah.
overall,
It would suck if one
schedule-wise,
of
it's
them
good.
was into hockey and the
Yeah,
other was
right.
into...
Yeah.
Well, it's nice
gymnastics.
for them because it is good time for them to practice together. Maybe they don't see it yet, but it's nice that they have it together. And
Right.
then you were asking about the tennis with them. I've played tennis with both of them a bunch, and it's good. If somebody else gave them tennis lessons, they get good very quick. They don't really want to listen to me too much
Right.
teaching them, but they like it. They have good hand-eye coordination. They're both very athletic, actually, so they'll
Yeah.
pick it up quick.
That's great.
Yeah.
Listen, while we're on tennis, before we move away from that, I reached out to some of my tennis buddies for questions
Okay.
for you, Tate. Sorry, Oli. And one of them from Rick Lang is, why are you afraid to play him?
Afraid by Rick Lang.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Think fast. Give us a good answer.
Okay.
And the other was from Jake, our pal Jake Korelnik,
Yeah.
who requested that you talk trash about Jim Morrison on the air.
Jim Morrison, yeah, he's easy to talk trash about. Jim Morrison is a very animated tennis player, very nice guy off the court, but I think when you play tennis, your true personality comes out, and not to go into too much detail, but his personality definitely comes out on the court.
I've witnessed that, and I've also bumped into him a bunch in Woodstock. He used to have a secondhand store there, right in the
I
middle
think
of
he
town.
might still have it. Yeah, yeah.
And the nicest guy,
Right.
so pleasant and friendly. And then you're playing on a court next to him, and like see some antics.
Yeah.
What
Once you go up 3-1 on him or so, the niceness goes out the window.
is he aware of that?
I think he is. I think he is aware of it. There's people I've played my whole life that just like can't control their emotions out there. It's very hard. You play, so it's a one-on-one game. You're battling out there. That's another the big difference with pickleball. Whenever I watch pickleball, they're all having so much fun and smiling and laughing, which is great. Tennis is like a struggle. It's fun, but you're grinding. It's hard. It's like a tough sport.
I think
so
they're grinding.
there's a little too much laughing in pickleball for me.
What was that, Oli?
I think they are grinding. Like I see
Yeah.
people really excelling and trying to hone those skills now.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you watch Tate play, I assume you have, because he plays in all the like top local tournaments. I assume you go out and support him. How is his tennis persona different from his work or home persona?
I don't
This
know
is
that
the money
his
question.
persona is that different, but he's very confident on the court. And I mean, he has said it's like the area where he really feels the most confident in terms of compartmentalizing different parts of life and
Right.
like, with when he's out there strokes and the ball. So I think that that's wonderful to see. It's great for our kids to see. But he doesn't change personality in terms of being more like aggressive or
I'm pretty calm out.
assertive.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
even keeled. I can keep it under control.
Yeah. That's good. But intense.
And focused, though. Very focused. I
focused.
get smart. Yeah.
Focused.
The focus. Lately there have been a lot of articles about how tennis is the best thing to play for aging.
That's right.
And, it's the physical things and the mechanics and how you move, but also the focus. Do you feel that you enter sort of a meditative state in your focus? Or
I definitely do. I find it's one of the few actually meditative states I can get into, or I can clear my mind and be very focused. And I think that's one of the nice things about it for me is it's really the only time that I can shut my brain off completely and just focus on it. Because if I'm thinking about too much, I mean, even in fact, I played today and my game was a little off just because we have this show coming up next week. And it's hard to get centered and focused. So I like that meditative aspect of it.
how long does that meditative state, I guess they call it flow,
Yeah, flow
or used to
state.
call it flow. How long does that last for you? Like a match or a set or a game or a point?
It's
or-
interesting. I don't know. I've talked to people. I think with tennis, I can go through times where I'm playing very well, and then times you don't feel as well. You know what I mean? It's these flows, and it's not only point by point or game by game or match by match, but week by week, month by month. I think sometimes you can kind of be in that zone for a little while, and then you get out of it, and then it doesn't take much to kind of get you in and out. Tennis is I find mental sport. You got to
Right.
think.
Oli, do you have that in your life? Places where you get into that? You meditate or do yoga or pickleball?
I should do more of all of those physical things.
Right.
I mean, I am active, but I don't have a particular sport or practice that I get that way with. But I definitely get into flow. I would call it more hyper-focus state with my ADD. But it's more, I just get into hyper-focus with work or writing or designing and stuff like that, where I'm completely, don't want to go anywhere else in my brain. So I get it more, I'd say, in the academic side of things. And I've always been that way in school and in grad school. And I would like to find, a practice, I guess, that I can also develop the mind-body connection with a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
And you say the academic thing, you've got a master's degree in art history?
I do, yeah. I have a master's, I have an MPhil, and then I totally let my dissertation fall away. I was almost done with it, but then we had our first daughter, and I was far afield in New Mexico, and I wasn't as passionate about what I was writing on anymore. And then we ended up taking over the shows, and I kind of took over the role of director and owner, so that it's better overall. I do wish that I would have gotten that PhD, but art history is very, very niche.
So is that an MPhil is like almost PhD?
Yeah. It's
okay.
like the bachelor's, then your master's, and then in between your master's and defending your dissertation, you can basically just apply for the certification for your master's of philosophy, which is like you've done all of the coursework for the dissertation for the PhD, and you just haven't defended the dissertation.
Right. And that's good, I guess, if you want to teach somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I loved teaching. I did love teaching art history. And I did think I would want to do that ultimately, but this opportunity, it was pretty miraculous, like in terms of my interests and abilities too, just that Quail Hollow Events was available to us, you know, when Tate's uncle really was ready to sell and they were looking at other, there were a lot of prospective buyers, and we had to fight pretty hard with, you know, family dynamics and such to get in there, but we made it happen, and it's just been wonderful overall because, you know, I make, you know, my own schedule primarily and still foster the arts in a very applied, real way.
Right.
We were also living out west at the time, and it kind of required the steps to move back here in order to actually get this involved with the business, which was, you know, a big deal when you have little kids and you're settled in a house there and all. But, you know, it was sort of once we decided to, like, you know, jump into this, it required someone to come back. I remember talking to my dad about it and him saying, you know, somebody needs to kind of be here to do the hard work. You know, it's not, you know, this is something, you know, you got to think about actually moving back if it's something you want to do.
Yeah. And do you have cousins? Does Scott have kids?
Yeah, Scott has one daughter, my cousin Sophie. She lives in Connecticut. She's a teacher there. You know, she's always, you know, Sophie and I grew up, and my sister at the shows. Like, there's pictures of me as young as 3 years old at these shows, like in the rain, running around. And, you know, she was always involved in it too. I don't know. I guess she didn't show the interest in taking it over as we did. We kind of had a good fit to it because, you know, Oli's got the background in art history, and she essentially curates the shows and deals with the people. And I've sort of taken over the business end of it that my dad kind of ran, which is a lot in its own, you know, and so it's a lot of logistical work. But, you know, I was a kid there. I grew up at these shows, and now seeing my kids do it, it's nice. It's like, it's almost like a full circle moment.
Right. Yeah. The art history like dovetails really well with this stuff. The what's it that you do? I'm blanking on the word. With the needles, acupuncture, sort of less of a direct slide
That's
into.
not quite directly into it, right? That's true. You know, that was different because in New Mexico, that degree, you had a lot more scope of practice, and you could do a lot more things.
Right.
Here, I still practice, but it's different. You know, more of my focus has been on like the Quail Hollow business. Especially since my dad's passing, because that kind of required me to sort of take over. He was still a part of it. He was still doing a lot of work. So that kind of required me to jump into his role in Quail Hollow.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the first, I mean, until a year ago, like really Neil, his dad, was like my partner, and which was a really wonderful relationship, and it was really, really special. Like, he was a very, very important person to me. But we like worked together every day. I mean, I wouldn't say he was doing a ton, to be fair.
They spent a lot of the time in Florida later on.
But he was an incredible person, and Tate was involved, but there was only so much that he could really be involved with, you know, while your dad was in the picture, even though he talked about moving out of it eventually. And so, but now it's bittersweet.
Yeah, it's a tough dynamic when it's such a family business, because like I didn't want to like jump in and step on his toes. So, you know what I mean? It was sort of like I was sort of giving it time for him to kind of, you know, I was thinking he would sort of get out of it and move down to Florida, and I would sort of take his role eventually. Obviously, it happened in a different way, but, you Yeah, for he was still very involved, but sort of doing less of the everyday work and more of just the event work, like during shows itself.
Yeah, and your sister wasn't interested?
My sister is interested. My sister lives in Munich, Germany. She's a PhD anthropologist.
Oh, boy.
Her husband is a mechanical engineer for Audi and Volkswagen. So they have a daughter. They live in Munich, very far away. I would love for them to come back, get involved. And they think about it, but they have their own life, and it's far away from here. So
and describe for me and everybody listening exactly what it is that Quail Hollow does.
So just like a little history, I mean, in the early 80s when my dad and Scott started Quail Hollow, they were woodworkers. They built like furniture and tables and all kinds of woodwork. And they decided that the money for this was in the promotion. So in 1982, they decided they were going to promote a show. Originally it was going to be at the Cuomo property in Woodstock, which is like a big piece of land there. As they were getting closer to the first date, which was Memorial Day 1982, the town of Woodstock sort of caught wind of the people that were going to come and said, we don't want this here. And they sort of threw them out of Woodstock.
Woodstock's got a history to it.
Very similar history to other shows there.
Huh.
And at that point, they scrambled for another space and they found the Ulster County Fairgrounds. And my dad always said when he went there, it's beautiful there if you haven't been. It's right under the mountains. It's right under Mohonk, you could see from there. They let them do the show in Ulster County, and they did the first show there, and the rest is history. I mean, they've done it Labor Day and Memorial Day for 45 years. They did the shows, and they got very successful with it. They would draw thousands and thousands of people, and the shows were a hit. Everybody liked them, and they kind of took off. So that's sort of the history of where they started.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is that show currently Memorial Day and Labor Day?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I was aware of that.
Yeah.
And then you have other shows, right?
Yes.
What are some of the other shows?
So those are the oldest ones, and over the years, Neil and Scott did a number of different shows, like in the Hamptons, at West Point,
In Albany, they used to do it.
but those were the two that were always able to be maintained. So the other large one we do is here in Rhinebeck in October. It's the Handcrafted Oktoberfest, which is putting a more artistic spin on a traditional harvest festival. That's going to be, actually, it's new dates this year. So it's Indigenous Peoples Day weekend. It's the 10th and 11th. And then we also do a small holiday fair in Poughkeepsie the weekend after Thanksgiving, which is at the Dutchess Community College. And then we do kind of pop-ups in other places, but those are the four mainstays right now. And we're always kind of in the process and conversation of, whether we're going to accept or take on other events that are out there. Yeah.
And do other events sort of like come to you and say, hey, we're struggling, we want to sell this. Do you want to buy and take it over? I mean, do people knock your door like that?
Sometimes, not so much buy and take over. I'll do like consulting work for events. Even like a couple of years ago, I did, I helped Tablet put on like a Hanukkah bazaar in the city, and that's a magazine in the city. I'll do some consulting work like that. But I don't know. Do we have people come? Not for established events. The events these days either just kind of die out, or they might want cross promotion or something. But it is because we're such a small business. It's hard to really join forces so often. I mean, but we might.
But the original hook of the show and what sort of got it off the ground is it was all handmade. So the person selling the product is the person making it. So we always have demonstrational components where we'll have people rug weavers making rugs, and then a wheel you could sit down on, like a potter's wheel. So the idea is the person selling the product is the person making it. So my dad was always worried with like Amazon and Etsy and these things that people could just buy stuff online, but it's an experience. It's coming out and it's talking to the maker, and it's had a real resurgence. Like there's like a whole Brooklyn like craft scene, and like it's really sort of taken off over the years. Since we got involved in, and what we have is that we have access to a database of a lot of artists that we've worked with over the years. So anytime the show comes up, we have the capacity to reach out to these artists and do another show. And essentially, that's why that's sort of what we can bring to the table is years of working with these people and databases of public too, that we could reach out to.
And is every artist there doing something that engages directly with the visitors, the public?
Not every artist.
every.
There's many demonstrate. We have a whole tent at the show that's the demonstration tent. So like
Okay.
in there we have wood turning, we have metal forging, we have Japanese jewelry braiding,
Cool.
oil painting, a lot of different things. But there's also fine jewelers, there's fine artists. There's really there's people who have brick and mortar shops in a variety of different places and will sell, their pieces there. We just try to get away from, or we try not to accept people who might not be, who would be a representative of the artist themselves, let's say. So what the visitor is getting, even if they're not engaging with the piece in like a hands-on way, is they're learning about the history of the object, they're learning about the story, the process, and really meeting the hands and the mind behind the piece, so that everything can kind of become like an heirloom of some kind, even if it's just for one generation.
Right.
And nowadays, there's just such an excess of goods all the time and things, and so much waste. And so we're trying to, bring it back to the person.
But it's a great insight that I guess your uncle and dad had, that if you can attach the experience to the object, that's a much stronger bond.
We always
much
have live
more likely
music
sale.
and food trucks and all that kind of stuff.
And a children's tent, so kids can get dropped off while their parents shop too, which is like a big thing. They can do crafts.
Yeah, it's
in
a
there.
supervised children's tent. One of the things I think that's kept the show going for all these years is that we've never kind of like sold out to the money grab, so to speak. You could take a lot more artists and make a lot more money, but if you lose that integrity of the handmade, you're going to lose like the real artists. You know what I mean? Like if a jeweler has stuff that they're making and, they charge a lot of money for it next to someone who's importing stuff and selling it for cheap, they get pissed about that. And that's when you sort of lose the integrity of the show. So over
And
the
we hear
years,
about it.
we've had to really be diligent on making sure the process is legitimate and the people are actually making the work that they're selling.
And people fall through sometimes.
I was going to ask all these questions. How does that diligence manifest to make sure that these people are really making the stuff themselves?
Well, so the application process involves submitting images, submitting process descriptions. Of course, there's like 50% at least of people who we know at this point who are returning. But then we look at what shows a new prospective artist might be engaged in already. There's a handful of shows that we really respect in the Northeast. And so that helps. But if we have any question, we request actual, not just images, but like video of the work and process, because they can just show a picture of them like in a studio. I mean, we just had this issue with a jeweler who was potentially selling not only like mass marketed, but misrepresenting as a different culture, like a whole thing. So it's best to get as much video. But I mean, at the same time, we can't always catch everything, and
No.
exhibitors have a lot of opinions about things and what should be allowed and what shouldn't.
And so they might feel very strongly like, well, you should allow this. And then they get there and you're like, no,
Right.
that's not what we want. We were pretty explicit. Then what happens?
Well, we only have had to like request somebody leave during show hours a couple of times, and there was a knife vendor a few years ago who was claiming to make like Damascus knives, and really we saw like boxes of imported knives in his booth, so he had really fooled. But if it's someone who, a lot of people try and just put like very simple, let's say, beaded jewelry in their booth when they're actually a fiber artist. And so sometimes we'll let that slide, but the jewelers might get upset about that, because many of our jewelers have really, they're like metalsmiths. They've been to grad school for jewelry. I mean,
Right.
they are like very fine artists, but we also want to keep a real range of accessible work. So
Right.
for some people, there might be an item that they really connect with and fall in love with, and they can't afford necessarily a $2,000 ring right there. So we don't want to make it like an ivory tower either.
Right. Right. And it just dawned on me, the New Paltz show, I mean, SUNY New Paltz is famous for its metallurgy, for its metals department. Do you have professors or students from that who want to come and be a part of the show?
We used to have like a scholarship program at our shows, and we would reach out to students there who could set up a booth and not pay for their booth.
Right.
It's fallen off in like post-COVID, I would say. but we would like to get that back. The students, we always go and drop off complimentary tickets at the gallery on campus and just in the student union and want the students to come. But
That's so
I do
sweet.
think we need to have more. It would be nice to have more engagement with professors. It's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Most of our staff, though, comes from New Paltz. Like, we have like a 30-person staff during the shows, and there are students there. So
oh boy. So the shows are open for 2 days, Saturdays and three. Saturday, Sunday, and Memorial Day. And then Saturday, Sunday, and Labor Day. Great. So you have these 30 people who come. Do they work just the 3 days, or do they work a couple of days on either end?
We have somebody who's been working with us forever who does all of the hiring, and he used to be the track coach at New Paltz, at SUNY New Paltz. So he would bring all like the track kids who do all the parking and, garbage and ticket takers. So during the actual shows, there's like 30 to 40 people being staffed. And then we have all the musicians. So we have a woman who books all the musical bands and things like that. What's like stressful, amongst other things, is that you're essentially trying to support hundreds and hundreds of small businesses. So they're paying us to do the show, and then it's our job to not only bring enough people in, but bring in the right people. Like, you could see 15,000 people on the grounds, but if they're not buying anything, it's different. Or, sometimes on rainy days, the feedback from the exhibitors is that they actually did better, because if you go to a show like this and it's raining, you're going to buy stuff and you're spending more time in the tents.
we won't do well those days.
We don't do
the
as
gate
well.
Is nothing, but like it's a cycle. So the exhibitors will do well.
But it's stressful, because these are people that travel around in campers and RVs, and they go from show to show, and they do this circuit of shows. I mean, I've grown up with a lot of these people, and they're just trying to make a living and trying to make money. And so it's a very interesting business that, I've talked to a lot of people over the years. I don't think it's something you could start from scratch now. We've had a lot of people like ask about, like, inquiring about starting a business like this. And I just don't think it would even be possible. I think it's just because of the longevity of it that, we sort of are able to keep it going like this.
Well, you can start a Field and Supply. I mean, there's really successful shows, but if they're also designer based and you have sponsors backing you, like, you can, but that many individual handmade vendors, it's it definitely helps that it has the age 45 years. And the staff, just to mention, are there like before and after.
And the reputation.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Right, you've got a good reputation. Do you have, I didn't see any testimonials on your website from the vendors and the visitors?
That's true. We don't have testimonials out there. We just changed our website 2 weeks ago, so it is fresh and beautiful
It's
right
good.
now.
I
but
liked
there's
the
not,
writing. Did you do the writing?
Good. Yes.
Nice.
But
Nice.
there's
But it's like Sunshine Artist
less.
Magazine is like the publication that like rates these types of shows throughout the country, and it's always voted in the top 10, if not top 5 in the country of these kind of shows. So
Right.
And those are all like Sunshine Artist bases the ratings completely actually on revenue by their artists. So they might love the show, but if like those kind of ratings are, can you do well at the show? Is it worth your booth fee? So that
Gotcha.
helps.
Yeah.
But we should get more testimonials.
How's your booth fee compared to other sort of Northeast regional booth fees? You go around, do you get the literature from these other places as
For
if
sure.
you're a potential vendor?
Yeah.
I mean, the two, like Art Rider is another production company here that also started in Woodstock, which is interesting. They do like crafts at Rhinebeck. They'll do Terrytown at Lyndhurst. They have a beautiful show there. They're similar to us, I guess, in the shows that they produce. And our booth fees, I would say, are on par with them. But there's others like Paradise City, which is mostly based out of Massachusetts. They're incredible. Their booth fees are quite high. I mean, they'll range over $1,000 for the weekend for vendors. And the vendor might not sell enough to support that, but it can be a long game too with orders. So I think our booth fees are pretty fair. We've raised them very, very rarely. But of course, just putting tents up is
the
an
shows
insane amount. Like it's a lot. So we have to have
It's got way more expensive for us, like everybody. The expenses to put these shows on is, it costs
And
a lot of money and to do it. So we've had to raise a little bit, but
And do you own the tents?
No, we rent from Big Top Tent Company in Cairo, and they did our wedding too. They're wonderful, but it is more than you'd think potentially to rent. 350 by 60 foot tents and 80 by 90 10 to 40 by 80. I mean, it's a lot. So that is a huge chunk. And then there's the grounds and there's the advertising and there's the staff. So the formula is ideally for the booth fees of the vendors to get close to paying for that overhead. And then, the gate when there's admission, that'll help for salaries. And
Well, what about you two?
well, for us, yeah, and for staff. But.
So the goal, and is this a general goal in this industry, that the booth fees pay for all the expenses and the gate pays for profit?
Yeah, but I would say it's not that, the booth fees pay for more than the expenses. And then if you do multiple shows a year, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of the idea, is that as long as you have enough artists, you sort of cover yourself. You can't
Right.
get hurt on it.
If you have a rainy weekend and it's horrible, you're not going to be in the red, like if you have the artist there. So
Right. Egads. I mean, that must just really suck when you've got this big thing coming up and the forecast is for just torrential
and it
downpours.
always is the forecast.
Well,
it's the Hudson Valley in May and
And
September.
yet
so.
you continue to make a living and
It evens
stick
out.
with
Like
it.
we might have a really, really rainy day, even 2 days, but somehow the numbers end up at the end of the year being almost the same. And so I think people come. There's a lot more competition in terms of what to do over the weekend. So his dad and uncle used to talk about the heydays of having 20,000 people on the grounds at once every day and per day. But there was just less going on then.
there's 20,000 people
So-
paying $20 a pop.
Well,
to
they
get
were
in.
paying $2
This
a
was
pop
back
back
in
then.
the old days. But yeah, exactly.
So it was a different time, and we don't know if their memories are also a little bit inflated, but
But yeah, that's true. There's a lot. I mean, back in the day, they would take out a half-page ad in the New York Times, like the Sunday New York Times, the week before the show. And if the people cut out that ad and brought it, that gave them $1 off the ticket. And they'd have stacks of 20, 30,000 of these $1 off coupons. Nowadays, nobody really reads the newspaper. I mean, maybe they look at the online publications. So the whole advertising world has changed a lot too. I mean, we
Yeah.
work with
And you
social
can't track it
media
as well.
more and stuff like this.
as you know.
That whole game has changed tremendously. So we're trying to adapt to this where we're at now.
So how do you reach, Oli mentioned the right kind of visitor, the people who are likely to buy. How do you target and reach them?
Mostly through digital marketing these days. But of course, so our advertising campaign, and I do all the advertising and design as well, but we have print advertising in the form of billboards, glossy magazines here in the Hudson Valley, like Visit Vortex, Hudson Valley Magazine, Happenings in the Hills, all of those. And then also we'll do social media, we do radio, we do iHeart, podcasts. So we do multimedia, but the bulk of all the advertising is definitely in digital, and that includes social media. So there's someone who helps us out with that, and it is you can definitely put in all your tags and keywords and demos that you're trying to hit, and
Yeah, they target certain
hopefully-
demographics. They look for affluent communities, Westchester and New York City. They're able to target demographics that we're looking for. And the Hudson Valley is so full of these new people that just bought $3 million farmhouses up here and need furniture to decorate it, and that's the perfect clientele for us.
And do you see many of them come to your shows?
Yeah, we do.
That's great.
There should be even more, though. It's amazing how after all these years, there's still people who don't know about, the event. So
Right.
But yeah, that's sort of the clientele we're looking for, is people like ourselves who own houses and have kids. And we've noticed, since we've sort of got more involved, a younger crowd coming in. We were trying to the discrepancy between senior tickets versus adult tickets versus kid tickets. We look at all that analytics and try to change it. We like the kind of young families, that's sort of who we're trying to attract.
Yeah, if they have a new house.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm old, I got a house, I
Right.
want to get rid of stuff. I
That's
don't
right.
need to bring
That's
more
right.
stuff in.
Exactly.
And I was just going to say really quick about the demographic of the customer, but also the exhibitor. We've been really lucky in a natural balance and transition, but we do have a handful of vendors who have been with this show since 1982, who have been there for 45 years, and they're amazing, and they're the lifers at the show.
Right.
They're aging, obviously. Some are in their 80s. And it's a lot of work for them to set up these booths and assemble their tents and bring their furniture out. And so we do lose those people like every year. There's someone who just can't continue on with that
People
lifestyle and
aging out.
traveling around.
Yeah.
And that's sad, but it's also then there is a new influx of creative hands-on, businesses. And we did see a major influx post-COVID, I think, of some people leaving the corporate world and trying something else out. So,
Right.
So far it's been balanced.
And
and
so
we
you,
hope that
so you
continues.
get applications from all these craftspeople and artists. And I want to ask the difference in a second. How many do you get versus how much room you have?
It depends on the show. Actually, for like our smaller shows, I'd say the percent, well, we might accept like 30% because we just don't have the room. And I'd say for applications, I mean, it really depends on the media category. Like in jewelry, we're accepting 30% because it's the most saturated category, that and fiber art. But like
Okay.
for, let's say, and ceramics too, but for wood, we need more wood, we need more metal, for example. So if there's really some promise in the work that we're seeing, it might be easier to get in those media categories. And we actually put applications out in November for all of these shows. They're due in February. So we do kind of accept them on a rolling basis, but the bulk of them are all coming through like, months and months before the shows.
Right. So for this upcoming thing, the Woodstock-New Paltz Art and Craft Fair, how many vendors will there be?
220.
Oh, that's so
It's
many.
a lot of
There's a
people
lot
to
of 'em.
communicate with, who have a lot of specific needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess you pay a lot of attention to what the mix is. Jewelers, fiber artists,
And
wood
where to
artists.
place
Not only that, right? There's a formula. You don't want to put two jewelers next to each other. There's like a formula to the way you lay out the whole grounds.
Do you use AI for any of that? That sounds like the perfect
No.
thing for AI to figure out the seating chart.
It would be way too confusing I would like to, but to even tell AI or a chat bot what to do, because
Yeah.
keep in mind, these people who have been at the show for even 5+ years, they know where they want to be and they're not changing. So it's like that booth that they think is theirs. So then I'm working with like all the requests and, it's an ever evolving chart. I kind of like it because it's like a puzzle. Like that part of it is just fun in a way until people complain about where they are.
They used to, during the application process, there'd be such an influx of applications. They used to get slides back in the day. We would go over to my uncle's
yeah.
house and go up to his attic and with a slide projector, and there'd be slides of everybody's work. This is kind of how they did it back then. And we would have one sort of expert from each media category up there looking at these slides. So you'd have one jeweler we worked with, one woodworker, and they would help sort of pick out the exhibitors and the shows. Obviously, that's changed. Now no one's sending. I wouldn't even know what to do if someone sent me a slide. But now they send, digital pictures of their work and videos of them making it.
And do you still have a panel of experts helping
It
you
depends
select?
on the show
Yeah,
and
it
it depends
depends.
on the media category. Like if we have a lot of jewelers coming in, and I mean, I
We
have to say
consult
with
with
my
people over-
background, like there's sometimes you just know that person's in, they're out, like, because it has to do with their booth display, their background, their imagery, their advertising. It's very clear. Other times, if there's really a number of really talented applicants, then we'll bring in, usually there are exhibitors that, like our longtime exhibitors that we bring in
Right.
to help.
And do you all usually end up buying something from
yeah.
each
Yeah,
a
show?
A lot.
Too much. It's one of the only times my kids know they can like just hit me up for money. It's very, there's a lot
Anything.
of cash
We have
and
to-
it's like kind of
we're like,
flowing. So
gotta
it's like,
support the artist, yeah.
they know when they could kind of hit me up for money at the
I
shows.
love that. And what are your collecting tastes?
From the shows, every year, like, and I remember this even going back in the olden days, there would always be like some new artist that like had something that everybody kind of wanted. Like there used to be a great leather worker who I have like tons of wallets from and belts and things like that.
Your bonsai guy you love.
Yeah, there was a guy who did bonsai trees, which I always bought, and I could
love bonsai
Yeah, but
trees.
they would die 2 weeks after I got them. I could never keep them alive. They were very delicate, but I loved them too. And then there was a guy who did years ago beanbag chairs that he made, and it was like a really cool product. Candles. I mean,
Hammocks. We went to that
hammocks.
for a while.
Yeah, there's a great hammock person. So
made by the Quakers there.
there's always something that kind of stands out. We had a Mexican gentleman who did like rugs that he was a rug weaver, and he did a process of how he did it, and they were absolutely beautiful. So
But
there's
Tate collects the specialty food products.
I like that stuff too. I
Specialty food
There's a whole
products.
building
Yeah.
of specialty
Like the
foods.
hot sauces and
Barbecue
the
sauces.
pickled
He
peppers
prefers
and
to
pickles and stuff. There's a whole building of like handcrafted food stuff with samples, so you could like dip and stuff like that. Yeah,
I feel like
Yeah.
you got my engagement ring at the fair
I
back
did.
in
I had
2009.
I had one of the artists make me.
I'm not wearing it anymore. Now I have my grandma's on, but
We've stepped it
I
up
do.
since.
No, I have it. I wear it, but I got to get my grandma's, so I just have that on.
That's sweet. What
But
a
yeah, it's funny
lovely-
because my cousin you're asking about, Sophie, Scott's daughter, we both got engaged like right around the same time, and like unbeknownst to each other, she had one of the jewelers, the longtime jewelers from what's called the A tent, make her ring that she wanted, and then I had someone in the B tent make it. So it's just funny that that was the first place obviously we went when we wanted to get married.
And
is
those
with
are just
Golden Jewels.
random designations. That's not the hierarchy.
No, there's different tents. It's just
Like,
how
oh,
we know.
oh, baby,
the
sorry, I
hierarchy.
got you. the-
A versus B.
No, not A
Actually,
versus
B is
B like
preferred
that.
sometimes by these exhibitors.
Yeah, no, it's just how we know that. We actually just laid out the tents and did that the other day in New Paltz. So, when you go to the grounds in New Paltz, it's empty. There's nothing on the grounds. You're going to an empty field. So we bring in, tenting, we bring in fencing, we bring in barricades, we bring in bathrooms. I mean, they have permanent bathrooms there, but we bring in like the portable ones. So it's like you're essentially creating your own universe. You're creating a world there that
Yeah.
like doesn't exist otherwise. At the Dutchess County Fairgrounds here, they have the infrastructure, they have the buildings, they have things like that. They have parking and they have all their people. In New Paltz, you're coming in blank and you're creating your own world there.
do you interact with any union people in any of these places?
Well,
No.
Gary's-
I'm guessing
is that
it's
you?
the agricultural society.
Agricultural
we work
societies,
with,
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and they're like a union.
Yeah,
I
think so.
don't know if they're a union, but I mean, for here in Rhinebeck and in New Paltz, it's the Ag Society, Dutchess County or Ulster County, because that's who
Who's
they work for
running the
county for
fairgrounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Huh. And have you worked with any venues once and said, you know what, that was a nightmare. We're never going to work here again?
I haven't. I know that Neil and Scott did.
My dad and Scott like to have full control over everything, and that's like in New Paltz. We rent the grounds from Gary Newkirk, who's like runs it there, and then he leaves us alone. He doesn't say a word to us. Other grounds, there's more. You have to hire their staff. You have to bring in their food vendors. You have to do this and that. In New Paltz, we kind of can control everything, and that's how it's it's more lucrative that way, and that's just how like we prefer to do it.
Yeah.
Other places are more of like a collaborative kind of thing where there's more sort of hands in the pot, so to speak.
But there were shows that they did just once, and then
They used to do a show in Albany. They did ones in Southampton when we were younger. Again, if you have the exhibitors and you have the artists, you can always add shows. You can always do it. We've been
Right.
approached to do a show in Manchester, Vermont recently about doing something there.
That's kind of a hike.
Yeah, it's far. So,
Yeah.
but
a lot of our exhibitors are from outside of New York.
I was going to ask, I got 4 questions, I guess. What percentage of your exhibitors are from within 20 miles of New Paltz?
Of not
not very many.
Right.
20% maybe, 15,
40 miles?
25%.
They come
Really?
from far.
Yeah. I mean,
100 miles?
I'd say 100 miles we're up now to 50, 60, 70% because we have a lot from the city. We have some from New Jersey. We have a lot from way upstate New York. But
Wow.
then there's many from just the Northeast and New England. So
Craft carnies.
and they, literally craft carnies, and they chart out their, season.
What's the difference between a craft and an art? Because your shows are art and craft or arts and craft.
I find it to be a problematic term. I actually think the whole name of our show is a bit heavy-handed, but it's been that way since 1982, so I'm not going to change it.
Heavy-handed in what way?
The Woodstock-New Paltz Art and Crafts Fair. I mean, handcrafted Oktoberfest, easy, that's fine.
That's
but
pretty
like,
good.
The Woodstock-New Paltz Art and Crafts Fair, it's like even on billboards, it's like I have no room because you have to like put the whole thing out there. And the reason it has that name is because it started in Woodstock, but then it got moved. I get all that, but I would just say from an art history perspective, there was always a hierarchy between the fine arts and the world of crafts. And it started changing in the 20th century and at different periods. But traditionally, I guess historically, the arts were more a term designated for fine art, which people conceive of as painting, sculpture, 3D object sculpture, and then 2D like wall art. And then crafts traditionally are the metalsmithing, the weaving, it's handicrafts it used to be called. But nowadays, I don't love the distinction because I think they're all art. But there are fine art fairs in the country that really focus on like gallery level work. And so they wouldn't be called craft necessarily. Ours are called like contemporary craft shows. Like when you look in the directories, it's contemporary crafts, which just means like,
I
anything.
like that better.
Oli's mother is also like a renowned mosaic artist in New Mexico.
Oh, cool.
So she does mosaics. She lives up in the top of a hill in this town of Placitas, New Mexico. And her studio, because mosaic is glasswork, it just all bounces off the light and it's beautiful. So I think,
it must be gorgeous.
a lot of that sort of inspiration probably for Oli and some of the artists, comes from her mother being like a very well-known mosaic artist. Does like installation pieces all around the country and does...
Does she ever have open studios?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
going
Oh,
out
yeah,
there to
for
visit
Not
my
only an open
sister, so-
studio,
She'd
but
give
she's
you
got
a casita to stay in
she's
right
got
there.
a casita
Yeah.
there, like a guest house.
Tate
It's
had a
beautiful.
tennis friend we don't even know that well, who just was traveling across the country, and he ended up staying with them for like,
Well, he was
Yeah.
driving across, so I
Yeah.
put him in touch with them, and he stayed in the
he had fun in
casita
the
for a few
studio. He
days.
brought us back some pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but
that's so
so
sweet.
she's a very so she has beautiful work. So it's just a good fit for everybody. It just like when my dad and Scott wanted to sort of push away from it a little bit, they had potential buyers who offered them a lot of money for the show, and my sister and I and Oli too at the time just didn't want them to sell it. I mean, I grew up there, I grew up around it, and it was just something that I thought I would always kind of have. It wouldn't go anywhere, and so
Right.
no matter where your life takes you, I always thought it would like kind of bring us back to here.
Must have been so sweet for your dad and your uncle to
see us
see.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must have been so
And
ridiculously
I grew up
satisfying.
working at the shows, and all
Right.
my friends would work at the shows. I'd give everyone jobs at the show, as kids, and now my kids, they come with their friends and they work there, and it's a very like family
Well,
run
work, not
thing.
play.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, well, they come and hang out and get paid. They don't
Yeah.
play.
Right.
Yeah.
Your kids, and I stalked you all over the internet to get all of this information. One of the things I found that I really liked, I think it was on Oli's Facebook page, and it was about Rhea's bat mitzvah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I
And-
don't post very often.
And
but
you
I did
said,
post
and you
about
said
that.
this thing, I just loved it so much. As we said in our blessings, Rhea, may you use your hands to build things, both great and ordinary, and protect great things that have already been built.
That's right.
And I thought, what a beautiful blessing
Yeah.
for these people who run a craft show and are
She-
engaged in the art of raising children.
That's right. She just had her bar mitzvah in November, and it was beautiful. It's very like artistic, and we're not affiliated with the temple, so we did it at a space and brought a woman in who she'd been working with. It was very much us. It was great. And
It was so perfect.
yeah.
It was really, and the whole experience was wonderful for all of us, like as a family. And so, yeah, I loved writing her blessings. It was like I was putting that off for a while because it's so intense to do that, for your children. But, and of course, I keep asking her, like, have you read that? And of course, she probably, I think it'll be there for her later on to read the long blessing. But
And your younger daughter, is she going to do that as well?
she will. She's 10, and she'll
Okay.
probably start. We did it not late, but we started Ray at 12. She did it at 13. We'll probably do kind of similar with Cora, depending on when she's.
They happen to be
Ready
great
for
artists too. Both of our
Yeah.
daughters are amazing artists.
And what kind of art do they
they
make?
can draw. They
medium?
can build things. I mean,
Cora's
they're
an
amazing. They're
inventor,
both
our
like
younger one.
incredible artists. I
love that.
I don't know if it's just in the blood or what. That they're great at it.
Listen, we're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been amazing talking to you two. I need to thank Brian Baruch for hooking
Yeah.
us up because it's been spectacular meeting with
What's
you.
up, Brian? If you're listening,
love
Can you
Brian.
plug the upcoming Arts and Crafts Fair
sure.
Yeah.
one more time?
The 45th annual Woodstock-New Paltz Art and Crafts Fair is happening next weekend. That's Memorial Day weekend, May 23rd, 24th, and 25th in New Paltz, New York at the Ulster County Fairgrounds on Libertyville Road. All information can be found at quailhollow.com, as well as pre-sale tickets, and there's tickets at the gate. And we'll see local people hopefully in Rhinebeck in October.
Yay. Well, thank you, Oli, or whatever your name is, and Tate Rubinstein. It's been a real delight hearing more about this. Thanks for coming in and talking.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Everybody
having us.
listening,
It's
have a
great.
great Friday and a fabulous weekend. Thanks to the Epicurean for letting us broadcast from their back room, and to producer extraordinaire Jen Hamoud for making it all happen.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Norm and
Have a
Jen,
great
so
weekend.
much. Yeah.